What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the UFC Run Peer MMA show. I'm your host, as usual, Draftcheat, joined today by my boys, Titletown and Joey Werk. Joey, what's going on, man?
What's going on? Excited that we got a little McGregor Poirier 3. I remember the last time we did this McGregor Poirier 2. I think I was the only one on Poirier, but maybe the times have changed here.
Oh, yeah. I jumped on Poirier after the show because of the ownership and everything, and it ended up being the right call. You might have helped me a little bit though, for sure, but
yeah,
I did jump on the right side.
I'll take the L now. When it was me, I was on Conor McGregor on that fight. I got sucked into the narrative a little bit. I'll be honest. Conor, I'm sure I wasn't the only one, right? Conor has a tendency to do that with obviously, some of the best trash talk in the game and all that. So I normally can see through that stuff pretty good, but I will admit, because I was a big Dustin Poirier fan coming into that, I just thought, Conor looked so much better than him in their first fight, but we saw that didn't have much effect on the second version. So we'll see in the third. Of course, we'll get to that fight eventually. We'll get to all 13 fights on this UFC 264. We'll talk betting and DFS title, kind of more of the DFS side, Joey from the bet side, and I'll chime in when I can. But yeah, 13 fights to talk about. So let's get to it. I guess maybe before we do title, do you see like kind of an overall arching theme on this UFC card? I don't think, compared to other sports, maybe it doesn't differ that much, the strategy from card to card, but do you see anything that stands out right away?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing in this card is on DraftKings, their pricing algorithm is based on odds, and they don't take into consideration a 5-round fight. So McGregor and Dustin Poirier are both 8,100 in the mid-tier, which is automatically you have to play one of them in every lineup. And because they're going to be so highly owned, I think you have to make a big stance on either one of these guys to really set a clear path for your lineup. Because if you go 50-50 and just say you play 20 lineups, 10 lineups are automatically dead right away, and you need to hit the nuts. I mean, MMA, especially with how many chops there always are in first place, you pretty much is first or last because all the money's split up top. So I think you need to make a big stance on the main events. I'm personally going to be locking in 2 guys in every single one of my lineups, even in 150. And we'll get to who those guys are. Most of you guys, if you read the playbook, will know, but that's the big thing that stands out to me. I mean, someone's going to get finished in the fight. They're both way underpriced. I think you need to take a stand on them. I think all 3 of us are on the same side this time, but we'll get to it. Otherwise, it's going to be a very fun card, though.
Am I safe to assume one of the 2 fighters you're locking in is Sean O'Malley?
Yes, that is the other safe to say assumption.
Spoiler alert, minus 1,000 Sean O'Malley. I saw that.
But he still is going to come in under own. I'm telling you. They always do.
Well, he'll be less than 100% on, so there you go.
Exactly.
Let's get to the fights. We'll start, as we always do, with the first fight of the night. Again, 13 fights on this card. First one, we have, I might butcher these names, Yaozong and Alan Amedowski. This one basically pick, I guess, Amedowski a little bit of a favorite, minus 120 to minus 130. Yaozong is 7 years younger. He is 5 inches taller. So kind of if you're buying into that, he does have a little bit of advantage. This one at 185. Joey, let's go to you first here. What do you see between these 2 from a betting angle?
Yeah, so what a great first fight to open up this card, right? I mean, as McGregor would say, who the fuck are these guys? But, I mean, they're in the UFC, so big ups to them. I'm not going to knock them anymore. But obviously, both these guys are off long layoffs. Amedowski's looking for his first win. Both guys looking for their first win in the UFC as well. Amedowski lost to Krzysztof Jokov and a 14-second knockout to John Phillips. Jokov's not terrible. John Phillips, basically all he has is those heavy hands. But he did fight in Bellator as well for a little bit, and he had some impressive knockouts before entering the UFC. He has been training. I've seen a photo with him with Alexander Gustafov, Sean Strickland, and Kazmat. So this is a guy that prefers to stand and bang, try to land a big shot or a flurry of shots to finish his opponent. Yaozong, he has almost a 4-inch height advantage. It was very noticeable during the stare downs and the weigh-ins. He has 3-2 in his overall professional career. I mean, he lost both his UFC fights, and his opponent's records of guys he beat 0-0, 0-1, and 2-3. I mean, he might as well beat me on the regional scene for goddamn it. And he's fought at heavyweight and light heavyweight. So this is his first fight at middleweight. Plus, he hasn't fought since 2018 in a loss versus Rashad Coultier, and that guy has since been cut by the UFC. But with that said, he did, stay in there for the whole fight. He went the full 3 rounds. He looked like, he could take some damage as well. Plus, another opponent is this guy just came to the U.S. 5 days ago. All his coaches had visa issues and were not allowed to enter the USA. So I'm not even sure who's in his corner. With that said, he is a Greco-Roman wrestler, was a silver medalist. And more than likely, I expect him to try to get this to the ground because it wasn't very impressive in his 2 UFC fights on the feet. He mainly, somewhat tried for takedowns, got it in the clinch in the Coultier fight, and he didn't move forward most of the fight. So this is basically a toss-up between 2 low-level fighters. I guess, I'd probably lean Hu Yaozong, the younger guy. Yeah. He looks better at middleweight, looks cut up and whatnot. But I'm going to be off this fight.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. I mean, in that Coulter fight, it was pretty close. He did land 92 significant strikes in that fight, had over 5 minutes of control time. So it's not like it was necessarily a horrible performance from him. But again, that was back in 2018, so it's been a while for Hugh. But I'm with you. I do kind of lean him here, especially as a little bit of an underdog, right? I think he's kind of a live dog. And title for DFS, for how close the odds are in this fight, you get a nice discount on Hugh Yaozong, 7,200 for him. I can't imagine paying the 9K for Amedowski unless you're doing it for ownership purposes, right? Because he will be very low owned.
Yeah. First of all, it sounds like in YouTube, bless you, DC. It sounds like the audio and the video are a little lagging. So I don't know what's going on, but you guys can hear us. Maybe just don't look at our pretty faces and just go on audio. But just wanted to let people know that. Yeah, of course. I mean, this fight, you couldn't have hit it any better because DraftKings does come out with the pricing so early for this pay-per-view. There wasn't a card last week. Pricing was out so early. Amedowski opened up as a minus 185 favorite, and that's why we see the prices at 9,000 and 7,200, which now you look at the odds, minus 136 to plus 110. This is an 8,400 to 7,800 fight. So you're getting clear value on Yaozong. And then you look at it, the inside the distance line is the 3rd highest on this card to end inside the distance behind Sean O'Malley and the main event. So because even though this is a lower level fight and for betting wise, it could go a lot of ways and you probably stay away. In DFS, this is a fight you want a lot of exposure to and one I'll have a lot of exposure to. As far as Yaozong, Joey Werk hit on almost every point that I was going to mention. The coaching issues are a little concern. He doesn't have them in his corner. He fought most of his career at heavyweight. His first debut in the UFC was at heavyweight. Then he dropped down to 205. Now he's fighting at 185, which he looked pretty good on the scales. 185 is definitely where he should be. So I give that Yaozong the advantage there. I expect him to use his wrestling. He is a good wrestler. And on the feet, I mean, Amedowski's path to victory is a knockout early. He does have some cardio issues, but 8 of his wins are all by knockout. And the thing with Yaozong is he's shown to have a pretty good chin. And he was sitting at heavyweight, taking heavyweight shots, and then 205. So I expect the chin to carry over. I like the dog in Yaozong too at 7,200. He's going to be popular, but I think he wins this fight outright. And I think he can put up a massive score as it is supposed to end inside the distance. If you are making a lot of lineups, in 150, I'm still going to be over on Amedowski because I think he's going to come in at like 15% owned. He's $9,000. People aren't going to want to pay that. They're going to pay for the other guys up top. So you get the ownership leverage. It's a game theory play. You get the ownership leverage off the chalk Yaozong. You get a guy that's plus 180 to finish inside the distance in a fight that's supposed to. I mean, I'm going to have so much exposure to this fight. It's not the highest level, but it's supposed to end inside the distance. 7,200 Yaozong, I'll have a ton of. He'll be popular, but I think he's one of the best plays. He makes the Sean O'Malley's work of the world. And then Amedowski, I know K Phallic's in the chat watching. I assume this is a K Phallic play because of the ownership leverage and game theory. Fun fight, though.
Yeah, should be a good one to kick us off. Like you said, not the highest level fight in the world, but that can be just fine for DFS, right? You get points for the same amount of points, no matter how crisp the striking or finishing is. So, yeah, I think that's a good fight to start us off. Next one on the card, the next fight, Jerome Rivera and Zalgas Zumagolov. Zalgas a pretty big favorite here, coming in around -350. I think he might be the third highest favorite on this card, I believe, or maybe second. So yeah, a lot of money coming in on him. He hasn't looked super great, I don't think, in the UFC. I think he's 0-2 in the UFC, and he's a big favorite here, which is, I think, a little bit odd. So Joey, why are the odds so high here on Zalgas?
I mean, I don't think it's deserved at all. You know, guy coming in here 0-2 really doesn't have any finishing upside.
Right.
-350. That's an implied odds that he's going to win 80% of the time. Is this guy winning 80% of the time this fight? Probably not. I mean, Zalgas was on the last McGregor Poirier card as well. I bet against him. And guess what I'm going to do again here? I mean, are we Jerome Rivera plus 280? I got to throw some sprinkles on that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Rivera has a 6-inch height advantage. I think an 8-inch reach advantage. He's on the verge of getting, he's lost his 3 UFC fights, so this is a real big one. If he loses this one, he could possibly get cut. And all 3 of his UFC fights have been on short notice. This one, I think he had a full camp for. So obviously the UFC giving him another chance here with his 4th UFC fight. He does have good cardio, continues to move forward and pressure his opponents, while Zalgas, he often takes time off during his fights. He hasn't thrown much volume. He's constantly looking for like a one-punch knockout, but he hasn't knocked anybody out in 5 years. So he is a solid wrestler, may look to try to get it to the ground. And Jerome, that's where I think Jerome has some trouble. But he's supposed to be good on the ground and even on his back, but he hasn't displayed that yet in his UFC career. So I think he's going to try to keep it standing. But I think Zalgas is probably, the better boxer of the 2 as well. So I think Zalgas is definitely the better fighter. But at -350, that's an implied odds at almost 78%. I want no part of this. So it's Jerome Rivera or pass for me. So I probably just sprinkle the dog here.
I'm with you. I think Jerome Rivera as a pretty big dog makes some sense. Even if you look at, like the big things to me, Jerome Rivera is 7 years younger. He's 6 inches taller, and he's got a 6-inch reach advantage at 125, right at 125 pounds. Like, you don't see a 6-inch height advantage at that height or that weight class, especially because these guys are kind of normally, a little bit smaller dudes, obviously. So, yeah, I'll take a sprinkle here on Rivera and in DFS as well. Title. Rivera, I think you'll get him at very, very low ownership just because he's a huge dog here. He's 6,900 on DraftKings, a nice price point for him. And Zalgas, 9,300. I'm sure some people are going to take him, right? Because he's a big favorite, and that's just kind of what dictates a lot of the ownership in terms of DFS MMA. But I'll be underweight here on Zalgas. Interested to hear your thoughts on the fight and DFS title.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I saw this. This line opened at -400 and +300 maybe a month ago or whatever. And right when I saw it, I put in Discord, hammer Jerome Rivera. Not that he's any good, because he's not. This line is just, there's no reason Zumagolov should be a -400 favorite against anyone right now in the UFC. So I think Rivera is definitely the value play for betting. For DFS, there's no way I can play Zumagolov for 200 less than Sean O'Malley. That's part of the reason I'm just going to lock him in. Like, Zumagolov, I'm going to have 0 in 150 lineups. If he beats me, I'll live to play another day. But I don't think he gets it done. Even if he does somehow get like a 2nd round or 3rd round finish, I just don't see it happening. This fight's supposed to go the distance. I'm not paying 9,300 for him. And as far as Jerome Rivera, 6,900 is a little enticing, but even if he wins a decision, I don't think it's a well-scoring decision. I don't think he knocks out Zumagolov. On the ground, I think if it does get to the ground, Zumagolov will be the one wrestling. So I think if anything, Jerome Rivera would win a very boring decision where he's outpointing him, using his height advantage, using his reach advantage. And if he scores 60, we just talked about Yaozong last fight at 7,200, who has a 100+ point upside. Nico Price we'll get to, who's very cheap, has huge upside. This mid-tier is absolutely loaded. So I'm just going to take a full fight fade on this one. Rivera is definitely live, and I wouldn't be shocked if Rivera won. But even if he wins, I don't think he hits the optimal. I think this is a high-scoring card. So I'm just going to fade this whole fight personally.
Makes a lot of sense. I will have some exposure to Rivera myself, but I think you make good points about possibly winning as a big underdog and still possibly not getting there, getting you to the top of the DFS leaderboards. Next on the card, we have Brad Tavares and Omari Akhmadov. Tavares, a little bit of a favorite here, minus 170-ish or so. This fight at 185. So should be a pretty good one. Both these guys kind of well-rounded fighters. We could see some wrestling, some striking here. I think Akhmadov, obviously the guy that's going to focus more on the wrestling. He's won 4 of his last 5, and Tavares has won 3 of his last 5. Both the same age, pretty much the same size, so we don't have any discrepancy there like we did in the last fight. Joey, I'll throw it to you for Akhmadov and Tavares.
Yeah, so this one I've been going back and forth on. I personally don't really like backing Brad Tavares, and last time I bet Omari Akhmadov, he lost to Chris Weidman, gassing in the 3rd round. Tavares is like a decision machine. I think this fight stays standing for a while. Omari's going to try to get it to the ground, but I think he can have some success there if he does get it to the ground. But we've seen the last fight versus Carlos Jr., Brad had a lot of success with his takedown defense. Yep. With that said, do I think Omari's probably better than Carlos Jr. And stronger? Probably. And then if Omari does get it to the ground, I think Tavares probably gets back up and keeps the fight standing. So on the feet, I see Brad outpointing Omari. But Omari has definitely the heavier hands. His live for a knockout, but he hasn't really knocked anybody out in a long time either. He's probably the more active fighter on the feet as well. So the longer the fight goes, I think the better it is for Brad Tavares. As we've seen, Akhmadov gas, in the 3rd round. He guesses actually a decent amount in the 3rd round. So with that said, I guess I truly think Brad Tavares probably wins via decision. So that's at plus 145. So I have a little money on that.
Makes some sense. Yeah, I'm not overly excited about this fight, to be honest. I kind of see this being somewhat of a back and forth battle. Maybe a split decision, right, where you don't know quite if you're going to win your bet or win your DFS thing when it gets to the judges. That's just the way I see it going down. Title, what do you see here between Tavares and Akhmadov?
My playbook pretty much had everything Joey said. I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, Akhmadov wants his fight on the ground. Tavares has 80% takedown defense. Akhmadov gasses. So if he goes for 4 or 5 takedowns in the 1st round and they all get stuffed, or he finally gets them down, I think Tavares is getting right back up, and then he's going to be really gassed, maybe even in the 2nd and the 3rd. I do like Tavares by decision because, he's known to be a decision fighter. 11 of his wins are by decision. But I wouldn't be shocked to see like a late 3rd round finish or something if Akhmadov is just completely gassed. But for DFS, he's 8,600, Tavares is. I think Tavares does win. But there's other guys in this range that we'll get to that I think have a lot more upside. So it's a fight I'm hardly going to have anything of. I think Tavares by decision because he does stuff the takedowns early, and then Akhmadov gasses. So I'm right on cue with Joey.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Yeah, not super looking forward to that one. I think a lot better fights on this card overall, but we'll see how it goes down between Tavares and Akhmadov. Next up, first women's fight of the night, Jennifer Maia and Jessica Ai. Maia coming in as a reasonable favorite here, about minus 200. What's interesting is, when you look at like the history for these two fighters, like they fought all the same fighters pretty much, right? So you can kind of look at the common history if you want to go that direction. I think that can be kind of a mistake to do in MMA because it's just so individual, styles make fights type of thing. So I didn't have a super strong lean here. I don't think I really want to lay the minus 200 on Jennifer Maia, but I don't know. Joe, do you have any strong feelings about this one? I think most likely this one's probably going the distance, right, between these two.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because, most female MMA fights I'm not really interested in betting in unless it's like my girl, blonde fighter. But, this is basically a class of styles here. Jessica Ai, the predominant striker. Jennifer Maia prefers to get the fight to the ground. And Jennifer is always live for submission once the fight gets to the ground. But for some reason, I think they're going to stay standing longer than anticipated. Jessica does move forward, throws a good amount of volume. And if she wants to try to get a takedown, she probably could get a takedown and possibly keep Maia down if that's the route she endures. But Jessica is very hittable, often sloppy at times, and her defense is questionable at times as well. I think this is probably a 50-50 fight, so I wouldn't be against taking the dog, Jessica Ai, but ultimately I'm just off this one.
Yeah, kind of that way too. I don't mind a little sprinkle on the Jessica Ai there if you want to go for the underdog. 200 just too much for me with Jennifer Maia. Title, your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's an 8,800, 7,400 fight. I expect it mainly on the feet. Jennifer Maia's smart game plan is to take it to the ground, but she really doesn't take too many fights to the ground for some reason. she had success against Shevchenko when she did, which was very impressive, but she just doesn't do it for some reason. 8,800, no way I'm paying that. Jessica I mean, she's not going to finish Jennifer Maia. It's plus 235. I think the likely outcome is probably Maia by decision, but for DFS, it's easy. I don't want any part of this fight. I mean, I said that about probably 3 or 4 fights so far where I'm not going to have much, but that's because when we get to this main card and stuff, we're going to want fights, and you got to make stands in MMA DFS. Another fight that I'm pretty much going to fade.
Yeah, that's 3 for 3 there on not having a whole ton of interest in this fight, to be honest. And like you said, title of the, what is this, the 4 fights we've talked about so far. Really just that first fight seems like you're going to have a lot of exposure to DFS. I think that's a pretty good approach. But I'm guessing you'll have some exposure to this next fight. This is one I am looking forward to myself. Dricus Duplessis against Trevin Giles. Pretty much a straight-up pick-em here. Duplessis a little bit of a favorite. Both these guys have a lot of finishes on their records, and I could see some high-volume striking here between these two. So I'm excited for this one, and also excited to see where you guys kind of land on who you think's going to win this one. Because, like I said, you're just trying to pick the winner if you're betting this one, because it's pretty much even odds throughout. So, Joey, I'll throw it to you first.
Okay, so Trevin Giles, he definitely has the better track record as he fought some solid UFC competition. He's been in the UFC for a while. He fought, he's only lost to basically grapplers. He beat, James Krause, Roma Dolizzi. He did have some trouble with Jerome Mearshart and Zach Cummins, but he's probably the better boxer of the two here. I think he hits harder, should look to close the gap between the two, has great hand speed. Is a long striker. I expect him to continue to move forward, throw combinations. And as for Duplessis, I did bet on him his first UFC fight, which he won. But man, oh man, was that scary. He was losing minutes basically the whole fight until he essentially knocked out Marcus Perez, who I think has already been cut by the UFC. He's not very good. He was having a lot of trouble with Marcus's pressure, which I see a lot of Giles going the same way here. Yeah. So, with that said, he is 33-0 in kickboxing, a highly touted prospect coming in here from South Africa. He likely will throw leg kicks, and I probably expect a lot of them, but his takedown defense is definitely in question as well. His stand-up is good, but is it UFC caliber good? I'm fully not sold on it. Honestly, I think Trevin Giles is probably the better fighter of the two. He really only has trouble with grapplers and wrestlers, and Duplessis probably isn't going to go that route. So an official play for me is Trevin Giles plus 100 on the money line.
Interesting. Yeah, I was kind of excited. I'm still excited about this fight. I liked what I've seen from Duplessis. Like you mentioned, he did take some damage in that last fight. I'm worried about him being able to keep this fight standing, though. Trevin Giles has had some pretty good success on his takedowns. He doesn't shoot all that often, but when he does typically get the fight to the ground. So it seems like he could possibly be better in every area, like you mentioned, Joey. I think for sure he's the better wrestler. I think that striking is debatable. I don't think we know for sure who's the better striker among these two. So that makes a lot of sense. Title, your thoughts here? They're both around the same price, I believe. Yeah, we've got Duplessis at 8,200 and then Giles at 8K. So both relatively affordable. Is this one where you'll have kind of some exposure to both sides, or do you have a strong lean here on this fight?
No, of all 13 fights on this card, this is the one fight that I don't have a good grasp on at all. So I'm excited to hear. I was excited to hear what Joey said. I mean, it's the closest fight on the card pick'em wise. Duplessis, he does throw very good leg kicks. I mean, he's plus 170 to end inside the distance, whereas Giles is plus 335. So Vegas thinks that Duplessis has more power and is a better chance for a knockout. I think he has a little more power, but I do think Giles is the better all-around boxer and striker. And I think it mainly plays out on the feet, but maybe Giles does have a wrestling game plan where he doesn't want to get leg kicked for days and he wants to control it more there, which would then score well for Giles. 8,200 to 8,000, because I don't have a strong lean. This is going to be one of my cop-out fights where I don't want whatever happens, whether it's a lower scoring one, a higher scoring one for one guy. I don't want it to ruin my night since I have stands on so many other ones. So I'm going to be pretty close to the field on both these guys. All of Duplessis' 17 fights have ended inside the distance. This one's minus 135, expected to end inside the distance too. So I definitely want exposure to this fight. They're both underpriced. They're both in the mid-tier. I wouldn't be shocked if this fight does stand for 15 minutes and Giles keeps distance, outpoints him, just gets better of the striking exchanges, and it does go to decision. And if that's the case, then it won't score well. So I'm not going to have like 80% of this fight or anything, but I'm going to be probably like 25, 30 on each guy, maybe a little more. You were thinking the same thing?
That was what I was going to ask, like 30% of each fight or something like that.
Yeah. And that I hate being that guy and that cop out, but when you have stands on all of them, sometimes in MMA, you just have to eat it like that. Maybe I'll get a little more Giles because I know Joey likes Giles. I've heard a lot of people, it sounds like in the industry does like Giles, but the line isn't really moving too much. So it's still the Plessis. I don't know. It's a fight. I'm interested to watch, see how it plays out. But the Plessis 17 fights, all ending inside the distance. That should be some fun for DFS. So definitely about 30% both guys.
Yeah, I don't think you need to apologize for kind of, you don't have to have a strong take on every fight. You're a very, very good DFS player. So people want to hear kind of that strategy and how to approach a card like this on a fight that you don't have the utmost confidence in. So, yeah, I mean, Joey being on Giles, that's enough for me to kind of lean that way in my own lineups. Maybe I'll get a small bet on him. And yeah, but me and you, Title, we're suckers for the guys, the kickboxers, the guys with good leg kicks, right? So
that's my favorite.
Yeah, I know, me too. So we can't be fading. Former soccer player here, so I'm liking the kick. So we can't be completely fading the kickboxer du Plessis here.
I thought you were a former golf player too. Soccer was your sport. Golf was secondary. I saw that.
No, not golf. Golf is recreation. Yeah, it's.
I'm messing.
Yeah. Okay. I was like,
no, it was you bombed the ball. It was fun, but I just had to. Hey, if you guys haven't seen DC's golf swing, he bombed it. Look at his Twitter. It's a nice swing.
We'll move on to the next fight before we go too far into my very mediocre athletic career. Next up on this card is Ilya Topuria against Ryan Hall, who makes his return after a long layoff. Hall has had a very, very successful UFC career, just doesn't fight all that often. Joey, maybe you know more about that. He's saying that like nobody wants to fight him. I don't know how much truth there is to that. He's won his last 4 fights, and actually Topuria has won his last 2 as well. Strong wrestling from Ilya. So this is an interesting fight to me. You do have Ilya being a pretty big favorite here. What is he? I think he's minus 200 or so. Even bigger, yeah, minus 240. Again, one of the bigger favorites on this card. Joey, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so obviously Ryan Hall, he's had a 2-year absence. He did have to withdraw from 2 fights. 1 was canceled because of Corona. So he's only fought 4 fights since 2015. And his last couple are versus, some names that Darren Elkins, BJ Penn was his second fight, Gray Maynard, Artem Lobov. Those are his last 4 fights. I mean, obviously he hasn't fought in a while, 2-year layoff, and those are going all the way back to 2015. So he is one of the top jiu-jitsu artists in the world. I expect him to do everything to try to get this fight to the ground, but if he doesn't get this fight to the ground and his fight stays standing on the feet, he's definitely in a world of trouble, I think. Topuria is one of the top prospects in the UFC. He has great offense and defensive wrestling. Very skilled on the feet. I expect him to try to stop, all the takedowns of Ryan Hall, basically dominate the boxing standing as long as they stay standing. He had a very impressive victory over his last opponent, who was somewhat like Ryan Hall. Damon Jackson was a submission specialist himself. And obviously Ryan Hall is probably a little level up from Damon Jackson, but at least he had some familiarity in the type of style that's going to be brought to him here. So end of the day, I do expect Poirier to keep this fight standing and probably finish Ryan Hall on the feet.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Sounds like are you going for inside the distance or just a straight bet here on Topuria? Yeah,
I mean, definitely. If you're making a bet, it's definitely got to be inside the distance. You can't be laying. What is he, minus 240 now? I would never lay minus 240 on a money line in UFC. But get to Topuria wins inside distance plus 130. If you really just want to do buy knockout, you get a little heavier plus 160, plus 175 in places.
Fair enough. Title, throw it to you for this one.
Yeah, this is a fight that I'm really, really looking forward to seeing. I mean, these are 2 guys outside of the top 20 that people don't want to fight because they both present a lot of problems. Topuria is an absolute monster and is going to be around for a long time. Joey touched on a lot of it. His striking is very crisp. He has a lot of power in his hands. He's a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's a very good wrestler. Anywhere this fight goes, he's a problem. The thing is, he doesn't want to use his Brazilian jiu-jitsu or his wrestling in this fight against Ryan Hall because Ryan Hall, I mean, there's levels to everything, and this guy is one of the best BJJ guys in the world. But on the feet, I mean, so if you're betting Ryan Hall and you haven't seen what he looks like yet, when he walks out to wait or to the walkout, you're going to be kicking yourself on why you bet this guy. He looks like your average Joe, got his hair on up full chest, a very nice, smart guy in the interviews. It's hard not to like him, but on the feet, I think it's just a complete mismatch. He's going to be pulling guard, rolling around, trying to do whatever he can to get this to the ground. But Topuria is just, I think, on another level when it comes to all-around fighting. His striking is so good. I agree with Joey Werk, where I think he knocks him out. He saw some takedowns, and he catches Ryan Hall at some point. I think both of these guys are going to have pretty good ownership because this fight is supposed to end inside the distance.
Yeah.
Both these guys are very highly touted prospects. I've seen a lot of people on Ryan Hall. I mean, his leg lock on BJ Penn was absolutely phenomenal. Topuria, everyone knows about him. So I think both these guys have good ownership. And this is a fight that I want to get leverage on. I'm going to fade Ryan Hall. If you're making 150, you don't need to full fade him. But if you're making 20 or less, I want leverage on this fight. And I really think Topuria is the better fighter, and that's going to get the finish. So give me a lot of Topuria, and I'm going to fade Ryan Hall and get some more ownership leverage.
I'm with you. I'm in on Topuria here too. He's 12 years younger. And, you know, obviously Ryan Hall, his big thing is his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Is he going to be strong enough to get the fight to the ground and, you know, kind of hold?
He's going to pull guard and he's going to do the weirdest techniques.
That's not the types of guys I really like to bet on, though, to be honest. So
Chase Hooper, but not Chase Hooper. Like, he's not even close to Chase Hooper, but he's going to be trying to pull things like that to get it there. I don't know, but if he gets it there, yeah, I know Chase Hooper, I know, but I mean, yeah, I think Joey, yeah, I mean, he's gonna, because I don't see him taking down Topuria.
No,
like he's gonna have to get it there in an unconventional way, which I agree with you. I don't love betting on those guys either.
Yeah, as long as Topuria can fight smart, I think he can win this one, and you know, maybe end it early. So I'm with you, 3 for 3 with us on Ilia Topuria here.
It looks like a lot of people in YouTube chat are on Ryan Hall too, which I did expect. I've seen a lot of it, and that's why I do think the ownership's going to be pretty high on him. And I'm not blaming. I mean, he could easily get the sub, but that's why I'm going to make the leverage play. If you think and you're confident someone's going to win, just like we'll get to the main event and stuff, I mean, you get so much above the field when you do make a full fade on a pretty popular fighter if you get it right. So I don't blame anyone for on Ryan Hall, but I think we see it the same way.
All right, next fight on the card, Michael Pereira and Nico Price. Pereira, a bit of a favorite here, minus 180 or so. I think we could possibly see some fireworks in this one. Nico Price, a pretty high volume guy. Both these guys, I think, are going to kind of slug it out, and so we should see a fun fight. I'm looking forward to this one. I have a good feeling that this one's going to be an entertaining one. We'll throw it to you, Joey Werk. Thoughts on Price and Pereira?
Yeah, so these guys, you know, both continue to be like crazy weird fighters. Nico Price has definitely fought the better competition of the two. And he has some sneaky power. He has great cardio, especially for someone who throws a lot of output. Most likely he continues to move forward most of the time, and he'll probably force Pereira into a war. Plus, he's a finish fanatic. You know, he's finished 13 of his 14 professional fights, and Pereira has somewhat slowed down as of late. He's not throwing the crazy stuff. I know his last fight versus Chaos Williams, I think they both were afraid of getting hit really fast and getting knocked out, so they played it back a little bit. I don't know if the same game plan comes here from Pereira, but I expect him to get a little reckless. You know, he has a lot of power. He gets unique with his strikes a lot. He's definitely the better of the two grappling-wise. I expect Nico to push the pressure because he more than likely does that in every fight, and Pereira could just land one big punch and it could be night-night. But this is definitely probably fight of the night because I expect fireworks. And rather than pick a side here, because I think either guy can get a finish, I prefer the under 2.5 rounds, minus 120 via bet 365.
Very nice. Title from a DFS perspective. What do you see here? We do have Nico Price, a pretty nice price point on him. No pun intended. 7,300 for Price and 8,900 for Pereira. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, another fight where I pretty much see it like Joey Werk. I think this is going to be fight of the night. I think there is some recency bias in the line of inside the distance and under 2.5 because, yeah, I mean, I mean, Pereira last fight, everyone was expecting fireworks with Chaos Williams. Two guys with tons of power going to go in, slug it out. And they both fought smart for their long-term health, I guess, because both guys they knew the power that the other one presented themselves, and they didn't want to get in that firefight, which ended up being boring. But with Nico Price, he throws 5.33 significant strikes per minute. He's always in your face, pushing forward, throwing volume. So I don't think Nico Price will do what Chaos Williams does, which will force Pereira to make it a fight and make it dirty. If this fight goes to the scorecards, I think Nico Price wins the decision for sure via his volume alone. But, I mean, Pereira can catch him at any time, especially in the first round, because Price doesn't have the best striking defense. He is relentless. He's there to take one, to give one. I mean, he absorbs over 5 significant strikes per minute too. And against Michel Pereira, I mean, you don't want to any shot you absorb could be then lights out for you. So this is a fight I have a ton of interest in.
We're back. Slight technical difficulty there, but we should be good to go to finish off this show. I think we're on just over a minute there, so all good. Title, you were just finishing up Pereira and Price. So why don't you give us your final thoughts there, and then we'll move on to the next fight.
Yeah, it cut out when we were talking. You were talking about the price at 8,900 and 7,300. So I expect Nico Price to be one of the most popular dogs, and I think he will have more ownership than Pereira. And I'm still going to have a lot of Nico Price because he's very live as an underdog. This is part of the reason I won't have Rivera and stuff, just because like Nico Price will outscore him for sure if he does win. But for Pereira, I think he will come in a little under-owned because of that 8,900 price tag. People are going to want Topuria. They're going to want O'Malley. They're going to want some other spend-ups. And Michel Pereira has first-round knockout upside and could break the slate easily at any time. So this is a fight that I want a ton of, both sides of it. I think it's going to be fight of the night. Joey's saying fight of the night. We're expecting fireworks, so get a ton of this fight. I might even have a little more Michel Pereira just because of the ownership leverage, but I'm still going to have a ton of Nico Price. Have a bunch of it. If you're only making 5 lineups, I'd probably have 100% exposure to this fight to narrow your path even more.
All right. Yeah, I like that, especially with the chances of a finish inside the distance in that one. Next fight on the card, Max Griffin and longtime veteran Carlos Condit, who's had a little bit of a comeback, 2 wins in a row after a long series of losses. And then, yeah, Griffin has been pretty solid himself to a little bit older fighters here, both guys coming off 2 wins, both lost to Charles Oliveira in the last 4 fights. So we do have a little bit of common history here. Joey, are you buying into this resurgence from Condit? Because it kind of looked like he was maybe on his way out. See you shaking your head. No, that's the way I was leaning too. So give us your thoughts here on this fight.
Yeah, I'm not buying in. I mean,
me neither. Yeah.
This guy, he was on the verge of, packing it in and retiring. Yeah. But, he's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Matt Brown. Matt Brown couldn't get the fight to the ground. He beat Corn McGee, who's not very good. But as we know, Carlos Condit, he has terrible wrestling defense. Matt Brown couldn't get him down last fight, but Matt Brown, wasn't a great of attempts. They weren't great takedown attempts from Matt. If you watch the whole fight, it was really, he had to punch and then go for a takedown rather than just go for a takedown, and he had nothing behind it. So, yeah.
It seemed like half-assed attempts kind of.
Yeah, so the fight, stayed standing, and he picked them apart, basically. But he throws, a lot of unique strikes as well, Condit. But I expect Max Griffin definitely to have more success here than Matt Brown. He is a good wrestler. I do think he can keep Condit down if he gets it to the ground for extended amounts of time. But he could definitely, he mixes in the takedowns. I think he's a pretty good boxer as well. He has decent power, and he moves pretty well. He also might have the slight edge on the feet. All in all, I'm not putting my money on a 37-year-old natural-born killer, quote-unquote, in Carlos Condit. So Griffin or pass, and I'm probably just going to pass here.
Yeah, I think Griffin can win this one. I think he could accumulate a decent DFS score title with a lot of control time. He's got a little bit of decent ground and pound. I mean, he won his last fight through the striking, right? So I do think he has a pretty good path here, good enough striking that Condit will have to respect it for sure. And then I think Max Griffin can probably get him to the ground here. Pretty good wrestler in Griffin. So Griffin, a decent favorite. I think sitting around minus 200, minus 190, depending on where you look. I like him to win this fight. I don't know for sure if he'll pay off that $8,700 price tag with a decision win, but I think he possibly could, right? Just kind of depends on how the other fights go down. So title from kind of a game theory perspective, and also, just breaking down the fight. What do you think between Griffin and Condit?
Yeah, this fight is supposed to go to decision. It's plus 140 to end inside the distance, but a lot of that has to do with Condit's not going to finish Griffin. So throw that out of the equation. Griffin's still plus 240 to finish inside the distance. But even if it does go to decision, he has a 100-point upside. And for the reasons, as you guys were saying, I think he's going to go to his wrestling early and often. Condit has no takedown defense, 35%. Matt Brown, I mean, he's past his glory days too. Max Griffin's just a completely different fighter than he is. He's explosive. If it's on the feet, if it's on the feet, Condit has a chance to win. I mean, it could be they just trade back and forth, but I still think Griffin has more power, but I don't see him fighting that game plan. I think he goes to the takedowns early and often. Someone asked me about prize picks, what my favorite prop was. I said over 2.5 takedowns. And if he does get takedowns too, I do think he can control this fight for longer periods of time. Condit maybe gets back up and then he rinses and repeats. I wouldn't be surprised to see a ground and pound finish or maybe even a submission finish in this one too. I just think at this point in their careers, Max Griffin's the way better fighter. 8,700. I think some people might fade away from that a little because it is supposed to go to decision and people a lot just look at Vegas numbers, but I'm going to be overweight on Max Griffin. I think he gets this win. I see a lot of upside in the wrestling and control time. So give me Max Griffin in this one. I like him quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll definitely have quite a bit of exposure to Griffin, and maybe even a bet to win by decision here. I think could be a good way for Griffin. Like you said, I think the takedowns should be there for him. Let's get to the main pay-per-view card then. It looks like a pretty good one. I kind of like 4 of the 5 fights here at least. The first one, Sean O'Malley and Moutinho. Chris Moutinho, a late replacement for Sean O'Malley, and O'Malley by far the biggest favorite on this card, and one of the bigger favorites that you'll see in the UFC, minus 900 to minus 1,000. O'Malley has been extremely impressive, right? He kind of had that somewhat fluky loss to Chito Vera, but other than that, I mean, he's just dusting his opponents. Fantastic striking power, a lot of power, especially at 135. And I think he's going to win this fight via knockout, frankly. I don't know if this one's going to last super long. O'Malley, I saw a tweet from him this morning. I don't know when he sent it, but I saw it this morning talking about, 75K bonuses for, so, that's on his mind, right? He's saying, yeah, I'm finishing this fight inside the distance. I'm assuming he's going for knockout of the night, which I think he's got a decent chance to get. Joey, your thoughts here?
Yeah, so, Chris coming in on, 4 days notice? He's definitely had enough time to dye his hair as he showed up with some green hair, but I mean...
You look real scared in the... Which isn't a great thing to be.
Yeah, definitely not. But I mean, this guy's got knocked out by fighters with 6 pro fights. What makes me think that Sean O'Malley's not going to knock him out? He's beat some low-level guys in CES, CFFC. Is he UFC caliber? Probably not. I mean, I expect O'Malley to mess around a little bit like he normally does, showboat a little bit. If he doesn't finish him in round 1, it's going to be round 2. But can we give Sean O'Malley some competition? I know he said he's got somebody to call out after this win. I get building up the product, the long-term play, but I think it's going to crash and burn if you do that. Just like the main event, we built up Connor. Now it's crash and burn time. Lost 3 of his last 4. I mean, I fully expect O'Malley, the longer fighter, to start this guy, but a minus 1,000, is that worth betting on? No. Minus even 300 to finish inside the distance, I'm not going to bet on. So I wouldn't even put him in your parlays because long-term, it's minus EV, negative EV. So essentially, I'm just off this fight. I hope O'Malley starts them in the first 15 seconds. But I mean,
yeah, we'll see. O'Malley, usually kind of he's a little bit patient, and then he'll just turn it on and go nuts. I love what I've seen from Sean O'Malley. Minus 300 to win by KO, TKO. Minus 350 to win inside the distance, depending on where you look. So you gotta pay, if you want the Sean O'Malley action, certainly title for DFS. We talked about it at the top of the show. This is going to be one where you have 100% exposure to Sean O'Malley. I'm right there with you. I don't think I'll make any lineups that fade him. And if something fluky happens, you just go down with the ship, right? You move on to the next one. So any additional thoughts here? We probably don't need to spend too much longer on this one. We think it's going to go down one way.
Yeah, I agree with all you guys said. I see on 5 dimes, Sean O'Malley minus 245 by KO or TKO. I think there is some value in that. I would throw that line in parlays. I just don't see how this fight goes to decision. I mean, I agree with you guys. Sean O'Malley's going to KO this guy. He's then going to call out what I think is going to be Cody Garbrandt. And I think that would be a pretty good call out. I would definitely be game to watch those two go at it and strike. So I wish I could parlay KO to then calling out Cody Garbrandt. I don't think there's a line for that anywhere, but that's what I want. I expect him to have a nice interview. I think that'll be the call out. But yeah, I mean, 100% Sean O'Malley. If he somehow loses or isn't on the optimal, I'll live to play another day. I mean, I just don't see it happening.
Boynton's asking, what do we think about O'Malley by decision? Guess what? That's not happening, Boynton. If you're going to bet on it, just send me that money that you're going to bet on that.
Yeah.
I mean, agree.
O'Malley's going to want to finish this fight badly, right? It'll 100%. Be a very, very big disappointment to him, even if he won a convincing decision. That's not how he wants this to go down, both for the bonus, which he's obviously thinking about, for his future, just his brand and everything, which he obviously – so if he's winning this fight easily and it gets to the second or third round – he's going to pour it on, right? Yeah. And I think he will finish this fight. He's not going to just try to outpoint him in the third round and go to decision. So do feel pretty confident that O'Malley does get the finish here. Next fight on the card, the second women's fight. I think just 2 women's fights on this card. Irene Aldana and Yana Kunitskaya. This one pretty much a pick'em as well. I'll be honest, I don't have a strong lean or any strong takes here, so I'll throw it right to you, Joey. Maybe you do.
Yeah, so I'm actually interested in this fight. Aldana has good volume, normally continues to move forward. She throws a lot of combinations, mainly based off of her jab. She does have a lot of question marks in her defense, specifically her takedown defense. I mean, when Holly Holm is taking you down 5 times, there's problems there. And she has had some problems versus good strikers. And Kunitskaya has looked good as of late. She has very good takedown defense, is pretty skilled in her offensive takedowns as well. I expect her to rock on and go after those takedowns. She showcased that last fight against Ketlin Vieira, and I think she has more success here. Plus, now let's not throw out Kunitskaya's boxing. Her husband is Thiago Santos. She's very, very well-rounded there. She continues to move around. She never stays flat-footed and throws kicks as well. So I think Kunitskaya, she moves around a lot, and she wins this fight, gets it to the ground, beats her up in the clinch. So I think this is going to go to decision as well. So Kunitskaya via decision plus 163, a lot of value there.
Yeah, Kunitskaya she's got a lot of control time in pretty much all of her fights, but last two over 5 minutes, and then the fight before that, second to last fight, over 13 minutes. She also landed over 200 strikes in both of those. Now, only between 40 and 50 of those were deemed significant strikes, but clearly throwing a lot of volume when she does get the control time. So title, I guess perhaps a path to a decent score here. Both these fighters kind of in that mid-range, 8,300 for Aldana, 7,900 for Kunitskaya. Do you have a strong lean on who wins this fight, or a DFS lean either way?
Yeah, I mean, I did, and Joey's on the same page. Let's go, Joey. I think Kunitskaya, I think she's just the better fighter right now. I think she will go for the takedowns. And we haven't even mentioned, but Aldana missed weight by 4.5 pounds.
True.
And Kunitskaya, she went on Twitter and talked about it too. Like, that's the second opponent in a row that has missed weight against Kunitskaya. She is not happy about it. I was on Kunitskaya even before that. And Aldana didn't look very good on the scales either. I think the control time, the takedowns, and I think this fight goes a little under-owned for their chance at the optimal because, like I mentioned earlier, people are going to look at it. It's a woman's fight. Plus 205 to end inside the distance, which I don't think it ends inside the distance. But if you look at the last 4 decision wins for Kunitskaya on DraftKings, 91 points, 109 points, 82 points, 119 points. Those are all very good scores with the takedowns, with the control time, with the strikes. And I think she runs it back and does that too. She also opened as a plus 135 dog, and she's gotten continuous steam all week. She was plus 100 yesterday, and I'll see her minus 107 at some books. I wouldn't be shocked to see if this closes at a pick'em or maybe even a Kunitskaya slight favorite. So give me the dog in Kunitskaya. A ton of stuff is going for her. I was on her beginning of the week, and the weigh-ins even gave me even more. I felt even more confident about it. 7,900, that's someone I'm going to get overweight on. Even in a decision win, there could be a big score here. Lower ownership than what I think it should be. So give me a Kunitskaya in this fight a lot. If Aldana wins, if you're making like 20-plus lineups, Aldana throws 5.33 significant strikes per minute, so she has volume. Kunitskaya has been knocked out in the past. Aldana has some finishes. So if you're making a ton of lineups, I wouldn't fade that one side completely. It still is a close fight. But if you're only making a couple or 20 entry max or something, I have a lot more Kunitskaya than I do Aldana. And Joey Werk gave me even more confidence on it. So let's go, Kunitskaya.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'll join you guys then on the Kunitskaya train. Reading Aldana's DraftKings blurb. It says, Aldana cited that the reason she's overweight is that she got her menstrual cycle during the fight week and her body stopped sweating because of it. I didn't know that was a thing. So
I don't know.
The more I'm still learning here at age 36. So there you go. Science. Let's get to the final 3 cards. First one's a big boy fight, 2 heavyweights, Tuivasa and Greg Hardy. Not the most technical fighters in the world here. If you ask me, Greg Hardy, obviously the former NFL player, former Dallas Cowboy. I really haven't been all that impressed with what I've seen from Greg Hardy, to be honest. Just kind of a sloppy striker to me, but played in the NFL. He's obviously kind of a top tier athlete, or at least was when he was younger. And then Tuivasa, it's kind of your traditional heavyweight, maybe a little more skilled than kind of just the run of the mill guys that you sometimes see like leading off cards or whatever. But yeah, pretty heavy hands, I think, for Tuivasa. So I kind of lean him, but interested to see where you're going with this one, Joey.
Yeah, so I do expect Tuivasa to come in here and pepper him with leg kicks. I know, obviously, Hardy had some problems with that previously, but he did learn and he did adapt and start checking them. So I do think this fight stays standing the entire fight. In my opinion, Tuivasa is probably the more well-rounded fighter of the two. Yeah. He throws a lot of kicks. His overhands are pretty impressive as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to get in a clinch, land some uppercuts. And Hardy definitely, he's big boy. He probably has the athletic advantage. He does continue to get better. He obviously has some question marks, including his gas can, but he throws with a lot of power. Can end the fight with one punch at any time. And Tuivasa has a weird style. He sometimes rushes in with his head down, so I can see Hardy cracking him and going night-night. I mean, I do, at the end of the day, I partially like Greg here. If his cardio stays there, I can see him starching Tuivasa. Either way, I think this is going to be a very exciting fight. If the other fight wasn't fighting tonight, this probably will be it. I don't expect the judges to have a say in this one. So rather than picking a side, I like the under 2.5 minus 130 via bet 365.
Yeah, this fight doesn't go to decision as minus 180-ish or so, depending on where you look. So it is expected to finish inside the distance. Both these guys throw reasonable volume too for heavyweights too, right? So you can get some points that way. Yeah, sounds like we maybe disagree a little bit on this one, Joey. That's all good. It'll be the tiebreaker here. Who you got, Tuivasa or Greg Hardy?
Yeah, this is one. I mean, I don't have like the strongest lean like the Kunitskaya. They're 8,400, 7,800. So it's a fight you definitely want some of both sides on. I do lean Tuivasa though. I think the leg kicks are going to early and often Ty's going to go to him. You saw Yorgan De Castro have a lot of success early in the fight against Hardy with him until he hurt his fight and absolutely didn't throw any volume after that. But if that fight kept going and Yorgan kept going to those leg kicks, Hardy looked to be in trouble. And then Hardy, his gas tank, I just can't get over it yet. I saw a tweet that he was 340 pounds during camp like last month and 2 months ago. Crazy. He weighed in at 264.5, made weight and everything. But what is he doing at 340 pounds? I don't know if that's helping the gas tank at all. Yeah, sitting on his couch. Yeah, I mean, he looked good last fight against Marcin Tybura, who is on a very good run in the UFC. Hardy looked really good in the first round until that gas tank caught up with him. In the second round, he just got dominated and finished because, I mean, Tybura did take it to the mat and then Hardy had no answers, but his gas tank just faded away. He threw a lot of strikes round one and then faded away. So I just don't trust the cardio enough to pick Hardy in this fight. I think the leg kicks for Tuivasa is going to get there, but I have seen improvements from Greg Hardy from every fight that he's made. So I think this is a fun fight. I'm glad to hear Joey thinks it ends inside the distance, because if you look at 5 dimes, this fight opened at minus 405 to end inside the distance. It's now minus 150 on 5 dimes to end inside the distance. Tai Tuivasa opened at minus 170. He's now sitting at minus 137. So Greg Hardy's gotten steam. This fight to go to decision has gotten more steam. 8,400, 7,800. I want this fight. I'm going to be overweight on it, but it's not a fight that I'm going to go 100% or 80% or something, because the line movement is going away from it. If this fight goes to decision, it's not going to score well for DFS because it'll stay on the feet for all 15 minutes, I think. And the fights you want to go to decision are the ones that go on the mat, like Kunitskaya, like Griffin. So if it's a knockout, you like these guys a lot. And I think the more than likely outcome it is, but don't go too crazy, because if it's a 15-minute striking exchange to decision, it's not going to score well.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If this fight, does go to decision, neither fighter is going to do very well, right? And you're not going to want either guy. So you do need the knockout here. I think Tuivasa both fighters could get it. I think Tuivasa is the more likely one to get it. But yeah, it should be interesting. I just haven't been impressed with Greg Hardy. I know he's made some improvements, and I know he's, supposed to be a great athlete. He doesn't look like that great of an athlete to me when I'm watching him fight. And then, the fact that you said he was up to 340 pounds, like, how many improvements could he really have been making if he's 340 pounds? Doesn't seem like he was working too hard in the gym. So we'll see.
But then he cut all that weight. So, like, that's what I don't even know what to think of it. Like, was he just so lazy for an extended period of time and just grinded, or like that couldn't have been part of your plan? I have no clue. I'm not I have no clue what to think. It's just really weird. 340 is like
75 pounds, something like that.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Hey, I need to get that Greg Hardy weight loss plan. I could use the job for myself. So let's get to the co-main event, or the second to last fight. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Gilbert Burns. Burns obviously coming off tough loss to Kamaru Usman. How to blame anybody at this point for losing to Usman? Looked very, very impressive prior to that, especially in that big win over Tyron Woodley. And then, Wonderboy Thompson, he's been a very strong fighter in the UFC as well. Has won 4 of his last 5. That one loss coming to Anthony Pettis. So yeah, I think this one should be interesting. Gilbert Burns, to me, a very, very well-rounded fighter. And I think he's got at least in my estimation, a decent chance to win this one. I was kind of surprised to see him as a decent underdog, plus 130 to plus 140, depending on where you look. So where do you lean on this one, Joey?
Yeah, so Burns is obviously the better wrestler, and Wonder Boy hasn't been tested on wrestling as of late. In his last 5 fights, his opponents have attempted 0 takedowns. Now he gets a very, very skilled grappler and wrestler. And I think this is, a bad matchup for Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy hasn't really impressed me as of late. The guy's 38 years old, 21 pro fights, 13 kickboxing matches. He hasn't finished a fight since 2016. He does throw, somewhat crazy volume. He likes to keep a distance because he normally has the reach advantage and picks apart his opponents, uses the kickboxing style. I think if Burns can close the distance, he should have some success on the feet as well because he definitely has some power in those hands. We've seen, I'm pretty sure he stunned Kamaru Usman. I know some people are arguing he didn't. I'm pretty sure he did. But
I think so too.
Yeah. Now, if this fight stays standing and at distance, okay, Wonder Boy's the favorite. He uses kickboxing, pick apart Gilbert Burns. But guess what? I highly doubt that's happened. I think Burns gets in close, probably gets him to the mat, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he got a sub either. His heavy hands are a problem too. So, Anthony Pettis put Wonder Boy down. Gilbert Burns is better than Anthony Pettis. That's not a question, or that's a rhetorical question.
Yep.
So the value is definitely on Gilbert Burns here, and more than likely, I'm going to make a move on him.
Yeah, I've already bet Burns. I don't think he should be an underdog. I honestly think that the odds should be flipped here. I think Burns should be the slight favorite. That's the way I see it. So anytime you can get a dog that you legitimately think is going to win the fight, those are my favorite types of UFC bets to make. So I'm in on Burns here, both from a betting perspective and from a DFS perspective. I think Burns, coming off that loss to Usman, people just it seems like people kind of write off the guys that get a title shot and get kind of dusted by the champion, and they're like, I guess he doesn't have it. It's like, well, he didn't have it against Usman, but Stephen Thompson is not Kamaru Usman. So I'm in on Burns here. 7,700 title on DFS for Burns, 8,500 for Thompson. Full Thompson fade for me. I'll go down with the Burns ship here. Interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm gonna be against you guys on this one. I bet Stephen Thompson over a month ago, and he's gotten continuous. He opened at plus 135, got really, really quick buy to become the favorite, and now he's got kind of continuous buy. It's slowed down now. I think the bigger cage just really helps him in this one too. As Joey said, everyone knows what Wonder Boy needs to do. Karate style, keep the distance, and if this fight stays at distance, he'll definitely have his way. Why Wonder Boy's takedown defense is so good is because of his movement. It is 78%. I agree totally. As of late, we haven't seen it really tested too much, but his striking, his movement and everything is why he's so good with the takedown defense. Burns, I think Burns is a very, very good fighter. He absolutely had Kamaru Usman rocked. Like, he could have finished that fight. I haven't seen Usman that hurt maybe ever. Like, he was hurt. But Wonder Boy's, I don't think he's going to give him that chance. I think this fight does play out at distance. The bigger cage does help. I know, Wonder Boy hasn't knocked anyone out as of late. He had Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal's a very, very tough dude. He picked him apart for 25 straight minutes. A lot of guys are falling to the damage that he did take. I'm not sure exactly if if he does finish Gilbert Burns. If it is a 15-minute standing affair with Thompson, you don't want him. But I do think he does have the finishing upside. I'm going to have some at 8,500. I do like others in the range a little more for their upside. But we saw him score 95 points against Vicente Luque in a 15-minute decision 2 fights ago. So, he definitely does have some upside. I think Wonder Boy's movement is going to be too much for Gilbert Burns. I don't think Gilbert Burns is able to get the takedowns with the movement. Thompson has been working on the whole fight camp. He knows where Gilbert wants it. If Gilbert does get it to the mat, Thompson's going to be in a world of trouble. Gilbert is very, very, there's levels above Thompson on the mat. Yeah. On the feet, Burns does have the power. He can connect if he can close the distance. I just don't think he can. However, at 7,700, I had underweight because I do think that he's going to have pretty good ownership. But with Joey on him, with you on him, he does have upside. Maybe I'll raise my exposure a little bit. But at the end of the day, my pick is still Stephen Thompson. I think he does keep the distance. I think the bigger cage does help him. So I'm going to go Wonder Boy. I don't love hearing you guys on the other side. Maybe I'll raise my Gilbert Burns exposure a little bit. And it's more of a bet for Wonder Boy instead of like, I don't think he's plus 250 to knock him out or to finish inside the distance, which would be a knockout. I mean, I don't see him doing 130 significant strikes or something on Gilbert Burns. No. He only throws 4.24 significant strikes per minute, but he only absorbs 2.8 significant strikes. That's where he's so good with the distance management. So yeah, I'm gonna have a little more Thompson than I am Burns, though. I think a knockout is viable. I totally see what you guys are saying, though. This fight is going to be a lot of fun. Two very, very high ranked contenders.
Yeah, I think you make good points. I do think if Thompson wins this one, it's probably by controlling the distance, right, and keeping it at range and kind of outpointing him. That could be perhaps disappointing for DFS at 8,500 too, even if he does pull the win. But yeah, I'm on Burns. And we've agreed on most things throughout this card, so we don't have to agree on every single fight, obviously. I do think, though, that we are going to be all in agreement on the last fight of the night, the main event: Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier 3. Obviously, these two fought in their last fight. Poirier knocked him out. Did he knock him out? Yeah, in the second round, right? Yep. Looked really, really impressive in that fight. Conor did have some moments in the first round where he looked decent, but ultimately Poirier kind of overwhelmed him with volume. He looked like the faster fighter. Conor seemed like he was kind of having trouble pulling the trigger a little bit on Dustin Poirier. And like we talked at the top of the show, I was on Conor in that fight, and you quickly realized you were probably on the wrong side, or at least I did. So I'm in on Poirier here. He's a slight favorite, minus 125 or so. Listen, Joey Conor doing all this thing. He's talking about, I was trying to be the nice guy last fight. Now I'm badass Conor again. It's like, once you start saying stuff like that, I'm kind of like, it just seems like a facade a little bit, It makes me just like you're just kind of making stuff up, to try to hype up the fight. So I'm a little worried about Conor here. I thought he was prepared for that last fight. I thought he did take it seriously. I thought he was kind of going to be ready to go, and it just wasn't enough. Dustin was just the better fighter, and I think we're going to see that here again. So you never know. But yeah, give me Poirier over McGregor. I'll throw it to you, Joey, next.
Yeah, I agree. As you mentioned, the last during the weigh-ins, during the last fight, they were hugging each other. Now this one, we got McGregor throwing kicks at him, and they're trying to get broken up. It's definitely a facade. I watched a lot of interviews this week. Feels as Dustin's calm, cool, and collective. He knows the game plan, wants to get in there and execute. McGregor keeps mentioning, first one to get knocked out. I only count knockouts. All this other shit, decisions, taps, all that mean nothing to me. First one who gets taken down is a bitch. I mean, he's obviously trying to bait Dustin into a boxing match, because the only way McGregor wins this fight is if it's a boxing match. But guess what? This is MMA, buddy. It doesn't work like that, all right? McGregor has lost 3 of his last 4 fights. Since 2015, he's only beat a washed-up Donald Cerrone, Eddie Alvarez, and Nate Diaz. And the Nate Diaz fight could have been judged either way. Personally, I think Diaz won, but that's for another day. So even if you go back before 2015, he beat Aldo on a knockout 13 seconds in. I mean, that could happen to anybody. He beat Chad Mendez, Dennis Siva. Okay, I'll give it to him. He's better than those guys. I mean, Poirier, Max Holloway, that was in 2013, 2014. Since 2013, who do you think's improved more, Dustin Poirier or Conor McGregor?
Yeah.
I mean, the best fighter, the best fighter he's beat since 2014 was Nate Diaz. We just watched him get beat up by Jose Masvidal and Leon Edwards. So, I mean, it's, Poirier since 2016, he's only lost to Khabib. He ran through the gauntlet: Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Max Holloway, Dan Hooker, Conor. He finished all but 2 of them, and I truly believe he's gotten better over the years. People asking, Poirier, if Conor checks the leg kicks, what's the game plan? I mean, he said literally the game plan last time was never even to throw the leg kicks. He just checked them because he started throwing them. He saw he wasn't checking them. He's like, you know what? I'll beat him up here. So I think we see a polished Dustin in here, a strike with Conor the first couple minutes, and then I truly expect him to try to get the fight to the ground, where he has a tremendous advantage, and he probably gets a finish, either the ground and pound submission. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to be, but I wouldn't surprise if it's either of them.
Yeah.
So, and I think, I really think it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I was on Poirier last time, money line plus 260. I'm going to be on Poirier again, but rather than money line, I'm taking Poirier inside the distance plus 145 because the longer it goes, the more the advantage shifts to Dustin as well. So, and this ain't going to full 5 rounds.
No, I don't think so either. I think Dustin finishes this fight. I think it could be relatively early. And like you mentioned, you know, the only way Conor can win is if it's a kickboxing match. Like, I don't know. I think I would still maybe bet on Poirier in just a straight up kickboxing match, even if you took the wrestling out of it. I just think he's faster at this point, you know, in terms of being able to throw volume. McGregor, I tweeted this. I mean, he's looking to counter strike a lot. That's kind of, you know, his best stuff. But like Poirier is fast. He's accurate. He's powerful. And I just think that won't work. He won't get a chance to pull that trigger and land that one big shot. Like he could, of course, right? Of course, McGregor could land a clean left at some point and set him down. Like, it's obviously that could happen. I don't think that's the most likely thing to happen in this fight. You know, Poirier just a very slight favorite. Another thing that's nice about betting against Conor McGregor is, you know, you're like never getting like a bad line because the public obviously loves McGregor, right? So it's kind of skewed in that way. No matter what, like even if you lost, it's like, oh, you still maybe got your money in decently well. So I'm in on Poirier here. I'll have, I think, close to 100% of my DFS lineups with Poirier. I'll go down with that ship. Maybe a couple of Conor McGregor sprinkled in there. But like Tyler, you mentioned at the top of the show, you do need to have one of these fighters, I think, in all of your DFS lineups. And we'll throw it to you here. But is that Dustin Poirier hot sauce behind you, Joey, that I see?
No, that's Sauce Bay hot sauce.
Okay. I know Poirier has his own hot sauce, so I was wondering if you brought it out for the show. But yeah,
that's my personal sponsor.
I gotcha. Title, we'll throw it to you here for analysis. McGregor, Dustin Poirier 3.
Yeah, I'll keep it short because I pretty much agree with everything you guys said. At the top of the show, I said you need to have 100% exposure to this fight, DFS. I think you need to make a stand on this fight. My stand is I'm going to be 100% Dustin Poirier. I'll get my exposure and Conor or stack it in cash because at the end of the day, Conor is live. Conor has the power to knock him out in the first. The odds are close. Like, I mean, yeah, Conor definitely has a chance, but I see this fight. I mean, I just think Dustin's the all-around better mixed martial artist at this point of their career. And I do think it gets to the ground at some point. A small bet, a stab bet I'll give out, plus 800 Dustin by submission at Bet MGM. I think that is very, very live. I would not be surprised if Dustin wants to make Conor McGregor tap and be a bitch at the end of the day. I mean, this fight's personal. You don't call out someone's wife. You don't do all that. This isn't like the old Conor McGregor trash talk. It's like he's trying too hard, it seems. I think Dustin Poirier is just a better fighter all around. I think it ends inside the distance. Take a stab at plus 800 by submission, and I'm going to have 100% Dustin Poirier. I think he gets it done again. Joey helped me out a little bit. I think that's part of the reason why I did get on Dustin last time. And the odds were just ridiculous. Everyone and their mom was on Conor McGregor last time. And yeah, we're not going to get blessed with a line that good again, or ownership for that matter in DFS, but I'm still going to be over double the field on Dustin at 100%. So give me Dustin again. That's 3 for 3. And I think we agreed on most things on the show.
Yeah, I think so too. Who do you think, assuming McGregor does lose this fight, Joey, who do you think his next fight is against Conor McGregor?
It's either Nate Diaz or he's going to like Jake Paul in the boxing ring or somebody.
I think he's going to fight Jake Paul after Jake Paul beats Tyron Woodley. That's my actually, I got to give credit to our guy AP with Run for Sports. That was his prediction when we were chatting about this fight. It made a lot of sense to me. So just thought
you were taking it from him. You weren't even going to give him credit.
No. What if he watches the show? I can't just steal it. So I got to give him credit right there. So yeah.
I mean, even if it's not Jake Paul, I think it's really probably somebody in the boxing ring.
Yeah.
Big name where he's going to get a lot of money.
Yep. Can't blame him for that. That'll do it for this show. Thanks for tuning in. As always, should be an awesome night of fights as it typically is. And this show will return when the UFC does their next pay-per-view. We'll be back here breaking it all down for you guys. Thanks for listening. As always, for Titletown, for Joey Werk, I'm Draftcheat. We'll check you next time.
Good luck, everyone.